Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 5. The requirements upon receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. The podcast objectives are analyze the controversy surrounding Yahushua Messiah, reveal the truth the enemy is most desperate to conceal, reveal the only way you can receive great revelation, and analyze the downfall of misguided studies. Welcome. Now, before we begin today's lesson, I would like to welcome all my beloved brothers and sisters in Yahushua Messiah who have been scattered to the four corners of the earth, who Yahuwah has joined to this ministry for such a time as this. I would also like to welcome anyone who is engaging our podcast or videos for the first time. We trust you were led by the set apart spirit in finding us. And if you continue to be led, we hope you stay with us, for these are troubling times and an evil day is just ahead. To this end, if you are watching this video on YouTube and you have not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button below and you will be alerted whenever we post new videos. Also, if you have any questions at the conclusion of this video, you can ask them using the link in the podcast description below the video player. Last but not least, if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up so YouTube can share it with believers like us. At the heart of all the controversies. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome back to our Word from a Watchman series. In our most recent lesson in this series, we analyzed how Yahushua Messiah is unifying the renewed nation of Israel by the covenant of restoration. In doing so, we inadvertently and yet purposefully came to see how Yahushua Messiah is at the center of all the controversies dividing our nation. And this was to be expected, for the scriptures reveal that he would divide our nation in times past, in times present, and the future. That said, Yahuwah has called me to share the revelation of Yahushua Messiah to this audience, as he has revealed it to me many years ago. However, he is leading me to take a very strategic and deliberate approach. Here is why. Many honest men and women have struggled and failed to receive the revelation of Yahushua Messiah because there's only one way you can receive it. And as they are ignorant to this one way, they are also ignorant of the requirements associated with this way. Along these lines, all the requirements upon receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah can be summed up into three. And per your understanding of spiritual orders, you should know that they are the fundamental, the focal, and the critical requirements. That said, and seeing as the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is at the heart of all the controversies, chaos, and noise that is dividing and thus destroying our nation, we must analyze these three requirements. Otherwise, you will be like many honest men and women who truly desired this knowledge, but they're going about it the wrong way. My dear friends, I don't need to remind you what is at stake. Likewise, I don't need to remind you of the lateness of the hour we are in, or how one false turn can get you way off track. And due to the spirits of ignorance and deception that are hard at work, there is a very good chance you won't make it back. And thus, we must continue in our pursuit of knowledge so that we do not lack. Let's get started. What errors conceal, truth reveals. Now, first things first, the fundamental requirement for receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is sure, and I have urged you to fulfill this requirement for many months now. To wit, you must be wearing the girdle of truth. Remember, the girdle of truth converts all your beliefs into knowledge. Those without it are at best well informed fools who built their house on the sands of partial data while drinking from a fountain of information bias. That said, if you're not sure if you are wearing the girdle of truth, there is a very simple way to find out. To wit, if you are operating in any of the 16 degrees at the foundation of lawlessness, that's a no go. For you have not unlocked the fear of Elohim. And those degrees are despair, distrust, self reliance, doubt, non compliance, non conformance, complacency, disobedience, dishonesty, unrighteousness, defilement, contempt, immorality, irreverence, blasphemy, and prejudice. Now, there you have it. If you are operating in any of these 16 degrees, you will never receive the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. Reason being, if you are infected with these 16 degrees, you are no match for the 16 degrees which follow, for they are collectively the 16 deadliest degrees of lawlessness. You should know them by now, but I will restate them at this time, seeing as we have not analyzed all of them in depth. Ignorance, deception, rejection, thoughtlessness, disregard, misconception, imprudence, insanity, error, confusion, indecision, misjudgment, denial, delusion, incompetence, and failure. Now, these 16 degrees of lawlessness are the primary reason why the girdle of truth is so critical as it pertains to your ability to receive the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. And as it is such a crucial matter, I will offer it to you as a revelation. The girdle of truth activates the whole armor of Elohim. Ergo, you cannot succeed in spiritual warfare without it. As it pertains to spiritual warfare, the enemy is persistently attacking the truth to prevent us from receiving the knowledge of Elohim. And the knowledge the enemy is most desperate to conceal is the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. And this, my friends, is why Yahushua Messiah is at the heart of all the controversies dividing our nation, past, present, and future. It is because the enemy knows the power of this revelation, and he doesn't want you to find it. Here again, this is why there has been and continues to be a constant assault against the truth and those who have been girded with it. It is for two primary reasons, which I will offer to you as another revelation. Reason number one: the man or woman who has been girded with truth will eventually unlock the next weapon within the whole armor of Elohim. That would be the sword of the Spirit, vis-a-vis the primary offensive weapon in your spiritual arsenal, i.e., the one that does the most damage. This brings us to reason number two, vis-a-vis the man or woman who unlocks the sword of the Spirit has the power to put the beat down on the enemy. With great authority and power, they will crush the 16 deadliest degrees of lawlessness in record time while achieving flawless victory. My dear friends, you must believe me. This is why I have asked you persistently to go back into the archives and to ensure you are wearing the girdle of truth. For, as I told you long ago, in my argument against the rapture theory, what errors conceal, truth reveals. And so, for the last time, in case you were negligent and failed to appreciate what is at stake, go back into the archives and make sure you have fulfilled every requirement upon the girdle of truth. If you don't, it will be your greatest mistake. Take my advice and take your time. Now, this brings us to the focal requirement for receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. That is, you must follow the spiritual process. To wit, like all things spiritual, you must be led by the set apart spirit. This is crucial, for many will attempt to receive this revelation in whole. To wit, they want to know everything at once. Here is what they fail to realize. Receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is the physical equivalent of building a house and swallowing a whale. This is why many, per the latter comparison, are choking on this revelation and spewing it out. Likewise, it is why many, per the former comparison, have an unfinished work. To wit, they have a house that has some features, but not enough for someone to live in it. And the reason why is sure. It's because their approach is wrong. For they are not being led by the set apart spirit. Trust me, revelations of this magnitude must be received piece by piece and brick by brick, so that the Ruach has his time and space to create a masterpiece. And before you know it, voila, there it is, the revelation of Yahushua Messiah unfolding right before your eyes. It was there all along. You just couldn't see it because you try to see it all at once. So take my advice and take your time. Now, Isaiah 28, 9 through 10 is revealing whom would he teach knowledge, and whom would he make to understand the message? For it is precept upon precept, line upon line, here a little and there a little. Now, in line with this verse, I implore you to receive this revelation line upon line, precept upon precept, here a little and there a little. Trust me, there is no path where we can receive this revelation overnight. Therefore, I ask you to stay with me. If you're with me, trust the process and take your time. Believe me, you can't wrestle knowledge from Elohim, and I can't force revelation into your mind. For look, listen, it has been written, for prophecy never came by the desire of man, but men of Elohim spoke, being moved by the set apart spirit. That said, all you have to do is be led. And remember, no revelation ever came to any man by his own desire. And yet, many men did obtain at a throne of a fiery flame with wheels of burning fire. The power to transform and to edify. Now, last but not least, the critical requirement to receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah is staying engaged in your spiritual practices. Along these lines, the Ruach has led me to identify 7 primary pillars of our faith, to wit, 7 attributes of the Ruach that facilitate our assimilation into the spiritual standard of Yahushua Messiah. This is why they are critical in receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah. And those 7 pillars are effectual prayer, effectual fasting, focus, dominion, authority, power, and dedication. Now, the power of these 7 pillars lies in the fact that they are the 7 primary keys to unlocking all revelation. To wit, you can be girded with truth and you can commit yourself to following the process, but you will remain blind if you are not operating in these 7 pillars. That said, let me be very clear. You don't have to operate at the highest level of mastery in these 7 pillars, but you must be consistent in your operations and you must meet Yahuwah's expectations. And this is something you would only know if you are operating in these 7 pillars, explicitly the pillar of prayer. Trust me, it is impossible to engage the Most High in consistent, progressive, or effectual prayer and fail to know if you are meeting his expectations. That is insane. Now, if you observe these 7 pillars, there is a key facet of spiritual living that some might think is missing. And yet, I assure you, it is not missing, for the Ruach has specifically led me to leave it out. Enter the spiritual precedence of study. Let's talk about it. Now, first things first, the majority in this nation have no idea what it means to execute a spiritual study. Ergo, I will provide a definition to set a baseline for our understanding. By definition, to study is to use speed, to be prompt, to make haste, to give all diligence in a vocation, to endeavor earnestly in the completion of an assignment, to labor. Now, first of all, this definition reveals that a study is not limited to the analysis of Scripture. Quite the contrary, to study is to give all diligence in fulfilling the requirements upon the spiritual office to which you were called. Notwithstanding, you must be adept in your handling of the Scriptures to fulfill your office. For look, listen, it has been written, study to present yourself approved to Elohim, a worker who does not need to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. That said, if you are a scriptural novice without urgency, you will be ashamed because your ministry will fail. Here is why. The scriptures contain the guidelines for success for every office, to wit, the unique requirements and the universal requirements. Ergo, the Ruach of Elohim will lead you to execute scriptural studies for the advancement of your office and the edification of the body, i.e., the mishpachah. Now, these things being what they surely are, the question of the hour is simply this: why do so many in our nation constrain their spiritual studies to the analysis of Scripture? The answer is sure. It's because they are ignorant. To wit, they don't understand the scriptures. Now, here we have another paradox vis-a-vis a catch 22, the chicken and the egg. To wit, the majority within this nation don't understand the scriptures, and yet they are persistent only in their study of the scriptures. Catch 22. Now, if you stay with me, I will solve this catch 22. In doing so, I will show you a major fault in this nation and why you should be careful of those who are overly focused on scriptural study and less focused on spiritual quality. Let's get to work. Now, let's begin with what most men and women are trying to achieve when they initiate a scriptural study. That would be a spiritual analysis, to wit, a prompt evaluation of scripture to obtain knowledge to fulfill an objective of their office. Now, here lie countless inconsistencies with the studies that most men and women initiate. First and foremost, they aren't quick. Remember, to study requires speed and promptness, which suggests everything you need to complete the analysis quickly should already be in you. Otherwise, the Ruach of Elohim would have never sent you on a fool's errand to obtain knowledge that he would never reveal to you. This brings us to the next fault, to wit, the one who attempts to study does not obtain knowledge. Quite the contrary, they obtain misinformation and bad data, which is out of touch with reality, which results in more questions, which results in more erroneous study. Now, that's the difference between spiritual analysis and the erroneous studies being conducted by the dying nation of Yisra'el. For spiritual analysis generates answers. It brings forth knowledge and understanding, and it unifies the body. On the other hand, misguided studies perpetuate division, ignorance, prejudice, error, delusion, heresies, confusion, and most of all, deception, which leads to rejection. That is, a rejection of the truth, to wit, the master plan of the enemy. Now, here lies the problem, and why many within the dying nation of Israel have become addicted to their ineffective scriptural studies. It's because they have been deceived into rejecting the truth, and thus they are starving. We know this because knowledge is the sustenance of our spiritual being. Ergo, if your studies result in an accumulation of surplus information and no knowledge, you, my friend, are not being fed. It's a paradox and an evolution of the catch 22 that started this whole problem. Vis-a-vis, the majority within this nation are constantly feeding themselves, and yet they are not being fed, which is why they are dying. Hence, the dying nation of Israel, a bevy of false believers who are stuffing themselves with information, and yet they are starving because they cannot convert this information into knowledge for the simple but sure fact that they have not been girded with truth. My dear friends, this is why they are not being fed. It's because they are fat with information. We know this because Yahuwah does not feed us with information. Quite the contrary, Yahuwah feeds us with knowledge and understanding. For look, listen, it has been written, I shall feed you with knowledge and understanding. Look again, my friend, and listen. Listen. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, we are in a nation of men and women who are spiritually obese, and at the same time, they are starving for knowledge. For they are hypocrites who have wearied themselves with fruitless study. Alas, they are poor fools who are given to endless study, and yet they know nothing. For look, listen, it has been written, in the last days, perilous times shall come, for men shall be ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. My dear friends, you must believe me. Something terrible happens when you are ever learning and never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. And we will analyze this crucial matter in future podcasts. For now, I ask you to remember that this is the critical requirement for receiving the revelation of Yahushua Messiah, which Yahuwah desires you to have. All you have to do is continue to operate in the 7 pillars of our faith and use the scriptures as you are led by the Ruach of Elohim to conduct spiritual analyses that result in knowledge, wherein lies the power to transform and to edify. Now, here is the final word. You'll be heading for spiritual retirement if you fail to fulfill the requirements. Brothers and sisters, hear me carefully as I say, the divine order of Elohim is established upon a myriad of requirements, which is why it is imperative for us to submit to the rule of Elohim. For the man who is not submitted will fail to fulfill all his requirements. Here lies the problem. Vis-a-vis, if we fail to fulfill all his requirements, then we will fail to enter the covenant of restoration. And while Yahushua Messiah is raising up the tribes of Jacob, we will die in a degenerate nation. Heretofore, I recommend, submit yourself to the rule of Elohim, and always keep this in mind. There is no rush to receive any revelation, so trust the process and take your time. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on today's lesson, and if you have any questions, please submit them using the form at pinnacleofholiness.com, and I will respond to you as soon as I can. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 5. And the next podcast is entitled, The Divided Nation of Yisra'el, Part 6. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim, continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.